Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerers Guild. Today on Magical Theory, we are going to be discussing golems. A golem is a created being where its astral form matches its vessel. For discussion purposes, I have divided golems into two separate categories. We have the stationary golems. A stationary golem is one where its task is still being performed by its astral form, but it has certain physical aspects that help it to perform that task. And then we have a functional golem. A functional golem is one that will be moving about in some way when you are operating it magically. Okay, so let's discuss the stationary golems first. I have an example of a stationary golem. This is Zoe, and when I created her, I very specifically imagined her to have yarn hair, marble eyes, shell mask, this color of paint that I had for skin, and everything that I knew I could make. I envisioned those objects and that form and shape into the astral form as I created her. When I created her, it was during the last eclipse, and everyone in the area wanted to see the eclipse. Everyone was talking about looking at it, and I used that energy to charge her eyes, and as I said, everyone was talking about it. It was a topic of conversation everywhere I went, and I used that desire to speak to charge her mouth, as well as a bulb that I set out during the eclipse and allowed it to pull down that energy from the eclipse itself and place that inside of the clay and use the energy from that and the positive life force energy from the bulb to charge the actual golem and its form. And what she does is she sits on my altar and observes all the lines of fate, flows of energy, and such that are being created by my actions and by my spell work, and tells me about what she sees and the potential of these situations and what could be done with what is already there, or what could happen with what is already there. Okay, so that is an example of a stationary golem. And we also, as I said, have functional golems. I have an example of one of those as well. This is Yolanda. She is a marionette, and when I work with her, she is actually held from her strings and she does her work. She actually does little rituals as I hold her up and work with her on the strings. I'm not going to do a demonstration of that now because it actually activates her, and I don't want to activate her during the video. Okay, so, of course, given proper training and education, one could make golems of robots and that sort of thing, and they would be an even more functioning golem. I have also heard of people who are mechanics working with their cars and going farther than just naming the car and giving the car a tulpa, but actually envisioning the form of the car as they work with it and slowly giving the car not just a personality but almost a life of its own, and these would also count as functioning golems. Okay, so this will be our last episode on created beings for Magical Theory for a while until we go on to the advanced stages later on. So I want to go a little bit over what we have talked about. As you will recall, I placed created beings into four separate categories. We had servitors, tulpas, egregores, and golems. And I had specific definitions of each one of these forms. Now, I want to state that these forms are not the limit of what a created being can be. We are not using these labels to define what we can create. We are using these labels so that we can define what we have created, so that it gives us a way to talk about what we are creating. So you don't want to let these labels inhibit you with your own creative ideas in this area. In fact, there is a third being of mine that I created that I would like to talk about, and that is Manitelu. Manitelu actually started as a tulpa, in that I imagined him as a messenger and simply imagined his form and his name and sent him out to deliver messages or tell me about what was happening at certain locations. Over time, I then decided to make Manatelyu into an egregore, and I created that form into a bottle egregore and gave him a permanent vessel. And after working with that for a while, I then changed his form in the egregore bottle and eventually actually made a marionette for him and made him into a golem. And I used him that way for quite a while. Now, the interesting thing about doing this progression of forms and types of being for this being was that he very much became more complex with each new incarnation. And in fact, in his last incarnation, where I made a golem for a marionette, he was quite useful for quite a while, but at this point seems to have actually wandered off. So perhaps someday I will find him and I will have a video working with Manatelyu. But that will be it for created beings on Magical Theory for now. Don't forget to join us on Friday, where I will be finishing up my demonstration on servitor minions, and we will go over the care and maintenance of servitor minions and how to use them. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Until then, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.